Hello and welcome to a complete beginner's guide to Hercules. Everything you need to know before you play him. Hercules is a frontline warrior, with his best attribute being his survivability. In teamfights, he can soak up damage for his allies, set up kills with his 1-2 combo, and still pack big damage with his ultimate. The way to get the best out of him is to be a constant presence in the enemy's face. Make them wary of being hit by your combo, and act as a bodyguard for your allies. In summary, he is a frontline tank with great self-healing and kill setups. Next up, we'll go through his abilities and combos. Hercules' entire kit is quite simple to understand, to be honest, and it plays very well into what his role requires. His passive could not be simpler. When he takes damage from enemy gods, he gains stacks of protections for 5 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. So the longer that a fight goes on, the harder he becomes to kill. Simple. On to his abilities. His first ability is a dash forward, and enemies that you hit are damaged, pushed back, and stunned at the end of it. It's perfect for comboing after his 2 ability, or pinning down a target for an easy ally kill. It's worth noting that Herc is immune to knockbacks while performing his dash. His 2 is a ground slam, that if an enemy is in the edge of, which you can see here, damages and knocks them up and towards you. The key thing to note here is that to catch an enemy in the knock-up and then drive them back to your team with your first ability. If you hit them with the ability but they're not in the knock-up zone, the enemies just take damage. His third ability is probably the most important and is key to his survival. It's a 2-stage heal. You gain a chunk of healing upon casting as well as some bonus protections. Then after 4 seconds, a percentage of the damage you take is returned to you as healing. While only 30% at level 1, at level 5 it's 70%, meaning that you can take huge damage and heal it right back. The best time to use this is just as the fight is starting. Gain those protections and eat up those enemy abilities. While obviously the chunk healing at the start is very useful, make sure you aren't waiting too long into a fight to use it. 4 seconds is a long time. Don't get caught panic healing on less than 10% health. Finally, we have Hercules' ult. He grabs a large boulder from the floor and throws it forward. It lands and rolls in a straight line for a while. It can bounce off walls or obstacles and hit enemies more than once. However, it does 50% reduced damage for any subsequent hits. As you can see here, the raw damage stats for this ult are big, which is why even full tank Hercules can still do big damage with his ultimate. In terms of combinations, I'd say Hercules really only has 3. His knock-up into his dash into his ultimate, and his knock-up into his dash into his ultimate. On to Hercules' strengths and weaknesses. Strengths: he has very high sustainability. He has a combination that can pluck and leave enemies heavily exposed. He's got a strong teamfight ult early to mid game, and he has great peel with his 1 and 2. However, he lacks consistent damage that you get with some other warriors. He has low mobility and therefore no escape. He can be countered quite heavily by anti-heal, and he can be very mana hungry early on. Also for conquest, he doesn't have good wave clear until early to mid game. Hercules is a very easy god to build for, yet I still see so many people get it wrong. You need to build into his strengths and not just rely on their base stats. The problem with giving specific item build guides is items and metas can change so quickly and drastically between seasons, meaning a set guide could be out of date pretty quickly. So instead of giving fixed item builds, I'm going to give you the stats that you want to build into, and give you a template and the process to construct your own builds. But of course, I'll also give some specific items too to help. So the stats you want to prioritise on Hercules are his protections, his health, his cooldown, and his mana. No tank is a tank without HP and protections, so they should be pretty obvious as to why you want to build into them. Stone of Gaia, Bulwark of Hope, Gauntlet of Thebes all give a good amount of health, and with my playstyle and build, they're must buys. Remember when buying protections not to overbuild one type. Don't stack 5 physical defense items if the enemy has 3 mages. It may sound obvious, but you'd be surprised at some of the things I see. Moving on, Hercules relies heavily on his abilities to both survive and output damage, but you can't do either of those things if you have no mana and long cooldowns. So cooldown reduction and increased mana also need to be considered into your build. Breastplate of Valor and Ancile, both useful items. Finally, while on some warriors you may build offensive only items, I personally refrain from doing so on Hercules. Crit, attack speed, lifesteal and penetration are all wasted stats to build into. Believe me, you can achieve good damage output purely from the power obtained from hybrid items such as Runic Shield, Void Shield and Sledge. There's a simple formula to remember when playing frontline tanks. Sustain equals damage. I've finished Conquest games with a full tank build with top damage. Don't feel like you need to buy in offensive items. Trust me, you can get by with hybrid. When buying items, follow a simple process and ask yourself 3 questions. What stats do you need to prioritize for this god? How many of those stats is this item improving? Do I need to counter something specific on the enemy team? If an item you are viewing in the shop improves, say, 3 out of 4 stats, then the chances are it's a good item to buy. Here are the current items I use and some example builds to help you out. So finally, we move on what to do with Hercules during the game. Since this guide is for beginners, I'll leave Conquest specific tips to a minimum. This will be more general tips on how to play Hercules during team fights. Number 1 rule is that you need to be present in every fight, front and centre. His sustainability and strong defense means you can take a fair amount of hits before you need to worry. His heal, when used correctly to protect incoming damage, can burn enemy abilities and open the door for your allies to attack. Because of Hercules' ability to land his 2-1 combo and ultimately set up a quick kill, any squishy will be very wary of your presence and will not want to get caught by your combination. This means that you can control the pace of a fight by zoning out the enemies. Use this to your advantage. Make them scared to step out of position. But keep in mind that plucking the enemy tank and driving them back towards your team can often be risky and an unsmart move, so choose your targets wisely. Being front and centre, you should have a good idea of everything going on in front of you, but don't neglect behind you. Hercules 1 and 2 are fantastic ways to protect your allies from enemies who get too close looking for a quick kill, and the stun at the end of his dash can turn an enemy backline attack completely on its head. I see many people using his ultimate to secure kills of enemies who are retreating. While this is fine, and it will be how most of the kills with his ultimate are gotten, the damage this can do to grouped enemies can be huge, so don't be afraid to throw mid-fight and just do big chunks of damage, especially in those narrow Conquest jungle lanes. On the topic of Conquest, Herc in solo is mana hungry early and doesn't have good wave clear until that 1 has been leveled up, so keep that in mind in the early laning phase. Make sure that blue buff or collection from your jungler is on point. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've learnt something from this guide today. If you head over to my Twitch channel, I'll be doing play alongs and also more in-depth guides in the future. Have a good day and Happy New Year.